Abrimos agora para as questões da plateia.
Boa tarde a todos. Eu gostaria de fazer uma... Desculpa. Gostaria de fazer uma pergunta para a senhora Page, da PLOS. Primeiro, eu vou fazer a pergunta e depois o comentário. Como a PLOS consegue que as preprints sejam avaliadas em 48 horas, se eu entendi corretamente? Considerando que o revisor é a alma mater de todo o sistema para avaliação de periódicos e no sentido de artigos. Eles são pagos?
Is this on? So thank you for the question. So what we did is that as a publisher that receives close to 200 articles a day, we operate in such a way that we changed we moved up some of the review process that we do already, that we do standardly, into the first 48 hours. This is how PLOS One already operates. We changed it for the other 6 journals so that they could also change their workflow like this. We used tools that we already have, like Authenticate, that kind of thing, for plagiarism. And then we also do a very quick check for ethical reasons. But we have it's not a full peer review. It's actually just a very small review to make sure that we are being responsible about what we send online. Because there is, a fair amount of content that can come out that could be dangerous, especially in public health. And that we do want to make sure that we have had a certain amount of caution there. But it's not a full peer review, and they're not paid. It's just part of the process. And so that process is then not duplicated as we go through the full peer review process with the article. But the preprint has had that responsibility check done first.
Boa tarde a todos. Meu nome é Cleusa Pavanha, sou da URGS, Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, e eu gostaria de conversar, que vocês nos conversarmos um pouco mais sobre o modelo de negócio de APC, que ainda não é maioria, não é adotado pela maioria das revistas científicas, mas tem crescido e, como vocês mostraram, também tem volatilidade, varia muito de área para área o valor. E no Brasil, obviamente, nós temos uma realidade diferente do que Luiz falou sobre disponibilidade de dinheiro, e acho que estendo isso também para a América Latina, os outros países que participam da rede. E então, inclusive, revistas do SciELO Brasil já adotaram essa prática de APC. E eu gostaria de saber, então, como vocês percebem a continuidade desse modelo de negócio, se vai acontecer realmente a virada. E é isso, então.
Luiz?
For me?
Yeah, I think so.
So I have an opinion about this. Cassidy probably does too. The APC is not a sustainable model from a global perspective. It is not a model that is one that has stood the test of time for the last 15, 17, 20 years, but it is not one that I think will continue. It is one that there are quite a few experiments to try to change the model, but as I was saying, we have a lot of history that we need to unwind. And in the case of the commercial publishers, they like their money. And so, Nature Communications charging more than $5,000 for a paper is it's not good. And it's not reflective of really the cost of publishing. But I think it is very fair to say, as Cassidy was saying, it costs something. You know, it does cost something. We have 7,000 editors on PLOS One alone. And so it costs something to have them all communicate, to be able to send them the right paper. That is not something that is a null cost. So we do need to find a way to make sure that the communication cycle is whole from a financial standpoint. But how we do that through APCs, through the author's wallet, that is something that I think is going to, I predict, will change quite a lot in the next few years, especially with Plan S and with the coalition, really trying to change first capping and then also saying that hybrids are not allowed.
Louise stopped herself a little bit, so I'll go ahead and say it. I think a $5,000 APC is unethical. So I would go that far. But I also agree there are costs to doing things. But I really think that the open access community has moved so quickly in trying to get access for those who are consuming. They haven't thought enough about access for those who are producing. And I hope we're at that tipping point now. I hope we're at the point where we're thinking about how we make sure that everyone can participate in this new model. And I am vehemently against anything that is the pay-to-play kind of model. But I understand that's our transition point right now. I understand that's where we are. And I hope we can rethink models that don't allow us to exclude people from scientific publishing.
Of course, the best is no APC, because we'll be happy. But again, there's a cost in the system. Who bears this is a big question. I think one aspect of APCs with fees, as is developing at the moment, that hasn't been studied enough, that is not well understood, is how there's a shift from the smaller entities paying way more per user than the large ones, which is the case now in subscription. If you think of a small college, for example, in the US, you take a small college, it's going to pay a certain fee for its subscription. Now you take Harvard. Harvard complains, oh, I'm paying 5 times more than the small college. Yes, but they have thousands more users. So Harvard ends up paying less per user, way less, than the small college. And the same thing happens at the country level. Now we're going to have a big stress in the system because the US is going to have to pay way more because it has several publishers, several authors. Same thing for China. China at the moment is having a free ride, and if we change to an APC model, it's going to have a huge spike in cost. And the same thing goes, so it's true at every level. That's one aspect that in scholarly communication we never study enough, is the effect of scales, and it's going to be extremely present with APCs, and we have to understand the effect of these scales, because the policies are not going to be smart if we ignore them, because there'll be a lot of friction in the system and we won't necessarily understand where it's coming from. And certainly it's going to come from the effect of the scale effect, because the large powers are usually powerful and they resist things that is not in their interest. And you're going to see this from the larger universities and larger countries.
Podemos abrir para uma última pergunta? Você já tinha chamado lá atrás, por favor. Lá atrás já tinha chamado antes da primeira vez, pode ser? Mais duas, então. Rápidas, por favor. A formulação da pergunta bem objetiva.
Bom dia, meu nome é Viviane Veiga, eu sou da Fiocruz, e no momento que a gente está falando sobre a ciência aberta e sobre os periódicos alinhados à ciência aberta, a minha pergunta vai sobre o data paper, os artigos de dados. Nós temos 27 periódicos que publicam os artigos de dados indexados na Web of Science. E desse número, nós temos 41% desses artigos de dados publicados dentro de data journals, que são periódicos de dados, que só publicam artigos de dados. E a minha pergunta vai, o que vocês veem sobre esses artigos de dados, se é um importante veículo para disseminar e dar visibilidade para os dados de pesquisa do pesquisador. O mais importante dele é o Scientific Data, publicado pela Nature, que tem um alto fator de impacto. E estamos falando sobre o compartilhamento de dados e um importante veículo está crescendo globalmente. E eu queria que vocês falassem um pouco sobre esse perfil aí do Data Journal. Obrigada.
As as an organization that has embraced open data as we have, we think certainly without question that data is the cornerstone for what could be that next frontier. There are components of the research process that are so important, but they're not respected enough to be first-class research objects. You don't get credit for posting your data. You don't get advanced in your career if you post your data. How can we change that? So what we're seeing is that you need to take one step forward at a time. That there are several publishers that are taking the data and putting a wrapper around it. Give it some context, give some understanding around what that is. And then that wrapper, which has metadata, can be indexed, can be cited, is something that's just easier for people to manage in our very old infrastructures of publishing. And so that data is now going to, I think, is going to start rising in importance and in validation as part of the research communication life cycle. And it could very well, that code and protocols, they very well could replace the article structure at some point.
Yes, if I can use Cassidy's talk as an excuse to ask a question to Luis. So you clearly showed that mandates are not enough and that compliance varies very much depending on how you use a mandate. So you talked about author data availability statements. And there's also data showing that that's probably not enough, that like even when you have a data availability, a code availability statement, a small minority of data can actually be retrieved. Some of the data actually came out on PLOS. So do you plan to move ahead from that? I mean, do you have a way to check if data is actually available or incorporate that into the review process?
That's a great question. So you're right. Right now it is about the author will proclaim, just say that this is where the data is and I've done this. And the role of curation and the role of checking that and really making sure is something that's rising quite a lot. And so I've been talking with quite a lot of organizations who are developing tools to be able to scan to see if the data is really there and that it is really open. We've also working with some organizations that can that want to look at the article and say, based on the words that are in this article, there's data that's missing. You know, because that data was not posted, and the author may just have forgotten about it or not thought that was important. And so you're absolutely right. It's where we are right now is a starting point, but the role of curation and the role of actually really checking this in a way that makes sure that the data record is complete is work that is ongoing right now. It's starting now.
Agradecendo, acho que podemos prever tempos emocionantes, não é? Daqui para frente, cada vez mais emocionantes. Agradecer a presença de vocês e as magníficas palestras. Muito obrigada.